This is More Than Before with Nathan Cook.
Hey, welcome to the show, everyone. I am super excited. Today we have a special guest who has helped the city of Manatee. I was pronouncing it wrong. He was kind enough to correct me earlier, but he helped this city in Mississippi to be awarded the Blue Cross Blue Shield Healthiest Cities in Mississippi, which is absolutely spectacular. He was recognized back in 2020, actually, as Physical Therapist Assistant of the Year. And he has a perfect attendance starting from kindergarten all the way to 12th grade. I think that's pretty much a miracle. I don't think that's possible. I don't know. You must never have gotten sick, or maybe back, when you were a kid, they just wouldn't let you stay home even if you were sick. They wanted those germs to pass to all the other kids. I don't know. He is an accomplished runner. He has run multiple marathons, half Ironman races, ultra marathons. One of the things I love about this guy is he has a huge heart. He has a huge passion to serve others. And I'm really excited to have him on today so that we can all learn from him, learn about his story, learn a little bit more about who he is and how he became this incredible guy. Welcome to the show, Cory Lee. I'm so excited to have you on, brother. How are you today?
Nathan, thank you so much for having me, man. I'm really excited about our conversation. You're somebody I have a ton of respect for, and man, you did your homework right there. How about that? So really excited about
I try to do a little bit of homework. I try to impress the guests more than anyone else, just so they think that I know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, wow, come on. That's some of that's back in the day stuff, kindergarten through high school. Yeah.
Well, sometimes you gotta be careful what you put out there on the internet, because you never know who's going to find it.
Yeah, that's good.
One of the things I love about you truly is just how nice of a guy you are. We had some opportunities when we were at an event. We actually met for the first time face to face at an event earlier this year, which was pretty amazing. It was a invite only event. We happened to, run into the same event and got to connect, and we got to have dinner a couple times and really get to know each other a little bit deeper. And one of the things I really love about you is that kind-heartedness that kind of shows up for you. I do recall, though, we were walking to a restaurant one evening. It wasn't a healthy restaurant. I do remember I didn't eat healthy. You ordered a salad, so kudos to you. But, as we were talking, you were starting to tell me about your running and how you love to run, and you had a number of different runs that you had coming up this year. And so I was actually kind of curious. Was exercise kind of always a thing for you in your life? Was that kind of an identity piece that you had? Because I know for myself, I grew up doing pretty much every sport that I could get my hands on. And I would say that probably that was my identity because it was what I wrapped myself with. Was that always kind of a thing in your life, that exercise was maybe what you wrapped your life in? Or is that something that came a little bit later on in life?
Yeah, I would say that actually came a little bit later on in life. Growing up, I played sports as well, baseball, football, all the good stuff right there. And I always had a dream of playing professional baseball, Nathan.
Ooh.
And but I also had this belief of staying humble. And see, the staying humble, I took it to the extreme of thinking that I was less than and that people were better than me. And where I'm going with this story, to answer your question, is I had the opportunity to play college baseball, but because I took that wrong definition of what humility was, it actually caused me to lack self-confidence. And so I didn't even show up for my own tryout for college baseball. I actually ended up going to college to be a physical therapist assistant because I didn't think I was smart enough to be a real physical therapist. But what happened was I had a teacher come up to me one day, and I don't know, Nathan, if you've ever had this or if anybody listening has ever had this, but you have those teachers that just stay on you. They just stay on you to try new things is what I'm talking about. She was always on me to do new and different things. And what I like to say is that her title was teacher, but what she was a leader, because she saw something in me that I couldn't see within myself. And what she challenged me to do, Nathan, was a 5K. She challenged me to do a 5K. It wasn't that big. It wasn't great, but again, playing high school baseball and football, you didn't get up on a Saturday morning to go do a fun run. That did not make any sense, right?
Fun and run do not belong in the same sentence. I don't know. Like they keep disguising these runs. Like they have a Tough Mudder up north in the Washington, Seattle area where you have to run through mud. Like, I mean, maybe I think people actually go to a spa to put mud on top of themselves. So like maybe it's spa people that like want to get their run and their spa time in. I don't know. So
Yeah,
fun run,
right.
that doesn't sound great to me. so
Well, it
you're,
didn't to me
you're
at
doing
that
this
time.
fun run on weekends.
That's right. But I respected my teachers, so I decided to go do this race. And something interesting happened as I ran that race. And across the finish line, they put that little finisher's medal around my neck. This thought just boop, popped into my mind of, man, I just ran 3 miles without stopping. I wonder how much further I can go. And it just sparked something in me to say, I wonder how much further I can go. I wonder what else I can do. And so I started challenging myself to, let's try 6. And then that 6 turned into 13. 13 turned into 26. 26 into 31. Ran a 31-mile race on the beach in Destin, Florida. Won the thing, first place overall. And it sparked another thought in my mind of, I just ran further than I thought was possible. I wonder what other areas of my life am I holding back in? And it was really at that point that fitness, it did become more of an identity piece, really to challenge myself. I love doing it now just for the health benefits, all that. But it started out as a challenge. I wonder how much further I can go. And I started asking myself that question. That's what led to all of our businesses, and kind of still ask that question to this day, But it is a big part of my life now. Not so much back then.
Well, I love that because a couple things that you said that I love. First of all, there was someone in your life, and I'm finding this more and more, for those of you that are listening, this, that with every guest that we've talked to, every single guest seems to say something similar, that they didn't believe that they were something, and someone saw them in maybe a piece of where they didn't feel like they were enough, that they felt broken. And they said, you know what, you're actually kind of cool. Like, you've got some talents. You just need to go out and you need to challenge yourself. You need to try something new. And having a leader, as you and I would call them, in your life to actually see something inside of you is actually truly spectacular. So I absolutely love that. But there's also this willingness piece to be able to step out and try new challenges. In your life, Cory, you have been kind of on this track of fitness for a while. There's a lot of people in the world that I think there's kind of two sides of the coin. There's either I really love fitness and I can't get enough of it and I just got to go work out, and then there's the other people that can't quite imagine themselves even working out. maybe in a really bad nightmare, they wake up and sweating. They go, "Oh my gosh, I just ran a 5K." Cory does this for fun at this point. So I love that, because that challenge truly does bring out a side of you that maybe no one else would have ever seen before. So you're telling in your story of how you got to this place of being a physical therapy assistant, which I think is great, because so many people have this dream and they go, well, no, I probably can't get the full meal deal. Maybe I should discount it. Maybe I should just get that. I know I could get close, but I'm probably not going to get it. So let's just lower expectation so that I feel better in the long run. How did that start to translate and change? Because it's not a quick road to become a physical therapy assistant. It's almost like you should get halfway through that kind of school and you should go, you know what? I might as well just go for the whole meal deal. You didn't do that. What was the shift inside of you? I know you were talking about this a little bit earlier, but what was the shift inside of you at that point to say, you know what? I need to make a change. I need to explore something else, something more that I want to be.
Yeah. No. So what's interesting about that? So going into college again, I always thought I was going to be a professional baseball player. It's not going to happen if you don't show up for your own tryout. So Nathan, people were asking, what are you going to do? I was like, I really don't know. And I've never even heard of physical therapy, honestly. Never even heard of it. But I was at church one day, and this lady comes up to him, and she says, Cory, they've got this radiology program at the community college. And I think it's only a 2-year degree. And I think they'll start you out about $40,000 per year. I was like, what? Somebody would pay me $40,000 per year? Sign me up for that, right? Like, I mean, I've been working part-time for like $7 an hour. That sounded rich. And so I go to our community college, and at our community college, it's a big health science community college, and they have nursing, they have physical therapy, they have all of it that you can apply for. Nathan, I applied to every one of them. I applied to all of them. I didn't know anything about any of them. And so
throw a dart in the darkness and hope that it hits somewhere.
That's right. Well, I did that. And what happened as part of those processes there, you have to go and observe and watch. And when I went to observe physical therapy, I saw people who were one way, and then through exercise, they were able to get back to doing what they wanted to do previously. And I was like, why has someone never even told me about this? This is amazing. And so I get into the physical therapy program, and actually I just stayed a physical therapist assistant. My wife went on and got her doctorate's degree, and we opened up our own physical therapy business, served our community. And primarily the reason I stayed as an assistant is because she was the physical therapist, and we could still run it as we wanted our business as we wanted to as entrepreneurs and as a partnership. And it worked out great. Getting into this physical therapy program, I want you to know this. They accept 13 people, all right? 13, that's it. There's over 250 people apply. The average GPA is like a 3.5. I'm sitting at a 2.5. Okay, 2.5, not good grades. And but I know my strengths, Nathan, that if I can get an interview, then I can get in, right? And so I didn't have the best grades. I didn't have all the credentials that they were looking for, but I got an interview. And Nathan, I knew I could nail that interview, and that's kind of how I actually got into the physical therapy program, was working with the strengths that we have, right? So.
You know what I love about that, though? Because so many people disqualify themselves before they even start. You know, there are people that have a dream that they want to go and pursue, and they want to start moving towards that, but they disqualify themselves because they don't have a credential to actually move in that direction. And what I love about what you just said, you knew your strengths. You knew your strengths that if you were able to get an interview, you would land it. And I think so many people need to hear that today, that there are opportunities, jobs, there are opportunities in relationships, all kinds of things. There's all kinds of opportunities that surround us, but you have to be willing to, one, know your strengths and know how to position yourself. You knew how to position yourself in an interview. You had to get to the interview part first, which is so important. But I think so many people don't actually take a chance because they don't feel like they have the credentials of some kind to move forward. So yeah. I think that's an absolutely spectacular point. That make sure, you know, if you're listening to this right now, write that down. What have you been stepping back in your life and not going forward towards a dream because you go, man, I don't have the credentials. I don't feel like I have everything in place. Know your strengths. Yeah. And if you don't know your strengths, that's a really important thing to maybe even start with. Cory, I'd love to ask you that, because identity really is important in terms of understanding what you're good at. It's not necessarily that you find your identity of like, you know, I'm really good at sports, so my identity is in sports. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about what are those core strengths that you have that no matter where you show up, those things show up with you naturally. Cory, how did you discover some of those strengths that you have? Like this one of like being a communicator and a good speaker.
Well, I'll tell you, I really want to speak into something you just said right there, because I hope it'll help those listeners. I love what you said right there about not feeling like you have the credentials. There was a point when we were looking at opening up our physical therapy business, and I was driving around town, and I went to all these other physical therapy clinics. And outside their door, they have their names and all their credentials. And Nathan, it looked like the doggone alphabet that I was looking at. Like they have all these credentials.
They were like in the military, and they had like ribbons going down one side and then down the back side.
All this stuff. And I remember being dejected. I really was. I was like, man, there's no way I can compete with these people. Look at that. They got the alphabet behind their name. I'm just an assistant. My wife just graduated. There's no way. And I went home and I told my wife that. And she said something that was profound. She said, but you know how to make people feel good. And
Mm,
it wasn't necessarily it was the meaning behind what she said, that I have my own strengths, but so do they. Those people, those other therapists, they're incredible people. I know them. They have their own strengths that they bring, but I do as well. So to answer your question, sometimes you don't even know what your strengths are until you have somebody point them out. And
mm,
so having people in your life that can speak into that. I think another thing for me is having some kind of rhythm of reflection, because when we reflect and we take time to digest those experiences, allows the lessons to catch up with us. That's what John Maxwell
yeah.
says: experience isn't the greatest teacher, but evaluated experience is. Making a habit of doing that. And understand this too, that as I continue to grow and as I continue to push to see how far I come, what's going to happen is you're going to hit the lid. I'm going to hit the lid of my current skill level and ability.
Yeah.
And it's in those moments that I can choose to be down, that I can choose to be frustrated, I can choose to complain, or I can say, all right, how do I grow from this? So I've tried to position myself as a student and not be offended or, get caught up in the emotion. The emotions are real. They really are. Not trying to downplay those emotions of, feeling sorry for yourself and all that. Had a guy say one time, you got 24 hours, Nathan, 24 hours. You get a big success, you got 24 hours to celebrate. But after that, it's time to move on. If you got a big, something bad happens, get your boom box, your sad, sappy song, you got 24 hours. But after that, move on. I've really tried to do that as well. Those have been some keys.
That. By the way, if you're listening, a boom box was this huge box that had speakers attached to it. And they would put this round disc. This like you could either do like a CD, or there was. I heard a young woman call it a cassette tape.
Cassette,
it's a cassette tape. Let's just think of a really big. I don't even know how to describe it, but go Google it somewhere. Like if you're young and you have no idea what Cory's talking about when it comes to a boom box, go Google it. You'll find something about it.
The only way I knew is the guy actually had one up on stage. So I'm just saying.
That's so funny. I love what you're saying though about reflecting on good experience, and I love this piece of not comparing yourself to others, because we find ourselves comparing ourselves to other people all the time, and we compare ourselves to people in their expertise. And then we compare our inexperience in their expertise, and that's the judgment piece. Maxwell Maltz wrote a really fantastic book. You don't need to go out and go read it unless you really want to go read it. It's a little heavy in some aspects, but there's a specific point within psychocybernetics that he starts talking about the person who walks into a neurosurgeon's office and says, "Man, I just suck. I'm not very good. Like I'm probably like the worst neurosurgeon in the world." And it's like, well, yeah, no duh. You didn't go to school for neurosurgery. Like, obviously you're not going to be good at it. So why would you ever compare yourself to someone that's like the best in their field? Maybe you should compare yourself, if you want a comparison, to someone that actually has the same strengths that you have. And then you start going, okay, which is exactly what you were talking about. How can we improve? How can we get better? When you see the lid of your experience, the lid of your abilities, you can actually start to hone in and make those things better. I want to rewind because you said something that I think is really fascinating that I think a lot of people find scary. You were working with your wife in a business. A lot of people, they think about that and think, I think I would rather pull my teeth out. I think I would rather die than work with my spouse, because there's constantly going to be fighting. We're going to be constantly butting heads. I'm curious, not that I'm curious about specifically like, the friction and those kinds of things that you guys had. I'm more curious about, what did you learn about yourself as you started working with your spouse? Because I have found working with my spouse as we're doing marriage coaching and those kinds of things together, I have had to learn more about myself and how I show up in those interactions than necessarily trying to figure out how to help her. Because I think that's how I started. How can I help her? And then I switched from, okay, let's help her, to, please, somebody help me. Like I'm messing this thing up. I need to get out of my own way. What were some of the things that you learned about yourself working with your beautiful wife, Kimberly?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Nathan. I enjoy working with my wife. We enjoyed it. It didn't feel like there was tension or anything. Honestly, we've always kind of worked together. While I was working, she was in school. She would come on the weekends and work with me. We just always have worked together. But I love the question that you asked. I did learn some stuff about myself by working with her, that we are a tag team partner, that she offers strengths that are in my weaknesses. And I have a very high propensity, Nathan, to have an idea and let's do it tomorrow. No planning, no need for all of that. People move too slow. Let's go. And what would happen is most of the time the ideas work out really good. But what I saw in my reflection time was that as I was charging forward, she was behind me cleaning up a bunch of mess, making it organized, right? And so what has happened is I recognized her strengths of strategy and planning. And I also recognized my strengths of being a visionary and let's move and act and discover along the way. And when we can balance those out, that makes a pretty powerful team. One thing that I do remember that was a strength that I learned about myself is there are times, you've got, or we had kids, and you've got that challenge right there of something that's happening in the home life. And now you're walking into the business world where somebody's coming in and you're coming to serve them. You had to immediately shift that off. That somewhat of frustration, you had to shift that off because the person in front of you, one, doesn't know anything about that, and it doesn't matter to them. That you got to put that off and you got to serve them. And so not necessarily putting it into boxes, like your life in a box, work life, home life, but knowing that if there was a frustration in one area, that it didn't serve anybody to carry it into the other area. And so I truly enjoyed actually working with my wife. She works with me now, kind of like what you're saying you and your wife do. And it's great. She makes me look better.
They normally do. Yeah. I love how you say, I was the gung ho. I was the one moving forward. That's normally me. And my wife is picking up the pieces, behind. I remember I worked when I was in, I think it was like my sophomore freshman year in college. I go back home and I worked for the summer. It was freshman year. I went back home and I worked for a box cutting company. So they were making like sea crates out of wood. And I remember my boss saying, if you cut it, you better measure it twice. And I'd never heard that expression, measure twice, cut once. My wife, she's going down the line and I'm cutting like 15. Oh, that's not right. Let's get something else. And, she's covered in sawdust behind me because I'm making mistake after mistake. But it's interesting though, because when you start to see that, it gives you a slight pause, right? Yeah. Because you want to be able to work well with one another. You don't want to cover, your business partner, your spouse in sawdust. You want to be able to make clean and tidy decisions.
Yeah.
So I really do love that. Cory, I love that you were talking about family, because family is a really big, important thing to you. You've got two beautiful boys, a little girl, and man, having that little girl in your life, I think changes perspective. We started with our girl. So I was like, oh, like all of our kids are going to be like this. And then you have a boy and it's like destroying everything and, and like, oh my gosh, what is this little thing? Who do you get this from? Oh, it's never mind. But
it's me.
Family has become so important to you in your life, but I don't think it was always necessarily up there, right? And not that it was a choice that it wasn't up there, but there was a point, if I remember correctly, there was a point in your life where you were working like 14-hour days. There was a day that you were going off to work and you kissed your son goodnight. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon. Like, it's not even really evening. Evening doesn't happen, I think, until 5 o'clock. So it's like 4:30 in the afternoon and you're kissing him goodnight because you're not going to see him until the next day. And he looks at you and he says, "Daddy, are you going to your house?" And there was a moment, and I think it's the moment that I feel sometimes when my kids stop me in my tracks and they ask me, "Daddy, are you going to work? Are you going? Oh, Daddy's just going off to work. Don't bug Daddy." And there was a moment where my heart broke and I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm doing something wrong. I'm missing something. Not to say that was the exact same feeling that you had, but I'm curious for you, what was it inside of that changed? And how did you start to make the changes so that you could actually put family first instead of work first?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, my wife and I, we talked from the beginning that one of our core values would be family, right? Neither one of us grew up with a very, I would say, tight knit family, and so we wanted to change that for ours. And for context, we owned our physical therapy clinic, we owned some gyms, and a normal day would be I would get up and I would be at our gym from about 5 a.m. to about 7:30. Then I would walk over to our physical therapy clinic from about 7:30 to 4:30, walk back to the gym from 4:30 to about 8:30 at night. And that was a day. And I loved it, man. I loved what I was doing. It did not feel like work. When people say 14-hour days, that kind of sounds like, ugh, but it did not feel like 14 hours. I enjoyed it, right? Making an impact. But one day I was telling our oldest son, good night at 4:30 in the afternoon. And he looked up and he said, Daddy, you going to your house? And it was really at that moment that I was like, man, I say that this is a core value of mine, but my actions and my words aren't really lining up. And so I need to do something about this. I started realizing that I wasn't upholding one of the core values. So one of the things that I did, I had been studying leadership at that point, but it was I was being more of a reservoir than a river, right? I was holding the information, and I had all these awesome people around me on our team that I wasn't delegating anything to. I wasn't developing anybody. And so what shifted for me was I started developing a team. I started developing our people, and I started empowering other people and handing off tasks that I really had no business doing. And as I did that, it gave me my time back, but it also, interesting enough, Nathan, it grew our business. It's an amazing thing. Whenever I think John talks about one is too small of a number to do anything of significance. It's an amazing thing when you have powerful people who are wise, who are smart, who are talented, that you begin to empower. It's amazing what you can do. And so for me, that was the answer for my scenario, was find the things that I need to focus on, like what are my top 20% of activities I need to do, and then delegate and empower other people to do the others. And it really gave us our time back, and just enjoy that now. So
I love that. So, Cory, for you growing up, I'm curious, like you said that, you didn't have family life wasn't exactly the same that you have created right now in your life with your current family, your only family, I guess I should say, not your current family, not like you're getting ready to move on or something.
Yeah.
But with your family, you've been highly intentional on creating an environment for them. So when you were a kid growing up, you have a very different upbringing than what you're currently doing with your kids. How did your upbringing affect you and who you were and how you became a man? And how is your current upbringing of your kids? How is that shifting the way that they're going to be able to see themselves as they grow older?
Yeah. And so I did grow up in a loving family, but what happened was my dad left when I was about 3. He left to Chicago with another lady. And so I was raised by my mom and my grandmother, and they loved us. They did the very best that they possibly could. And my stepdad, he came along when I was probably about 10 or 11. But what was interesting about that, Nathan, was I didn't position myself to be fathered. Right. I saw him as another guy. He's a great guy. He really is. He's a great grandfather to our kids today, but I would not allow myself to be fathered by him. And so I never really had a father. And what I did was I would watch other men. I would watch how they interacted. I saw some people who in the community, they had a great reputation, but in the house, not so much. And then I saw other people who had a great reputation in the community, and their families actually wanted to be around them. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to make sure that, that my kids want to be around me, that I can lead them, I can correct them, but also I can actually truly be a leader, a father. There's a difference between being a man and a father, I think. And I also find it interesting that we currently live in the largest fatherless generation in history. that men did not go off to war. And what I mean by that is either fathers are not in the home physically or they're not mentally in the home.
Mm-hmm.
And so I try really hard. It's sometimes not always great at it, but being present even whenever I'm there. And so trying to give time and attention as well. And so that's one of the things we're trying to change is trying to be present. I want to develop not just good kids. Like I want to develop, we've got 2 boys and a girl, 2 men and a woman who makes a powerful impact on culture and society, who go out and develop leaders in their generation. And that's different whenever you think from that mindset compared to, well, they're just a kid and I'm just going to try to raise them the best I can. I want to do that, but I'm trying to set them up for success as well. And so that's one of the things we changed and trying to be intentional about.
So many parents, I don't think they see their kids in their fullest potential. I mean, I don't mean that you have to, say, oh, well, this is what, little Jimmy's going to be doing when he's older. He's going to be a doctor, or he's going to be a NASA astronaut, because he told me, or a dinosaur. I don't know. You do want to be around your kids to be able to see who they are currently, but be able to project in your mind who they could be. Now, that doesn't mean you have all of the small particulars in place, but it does mean that you have to actually see your kids as a functional adult who is contributing and being a leader in society. Because you're right, 100%. We live in the largest gap of fatherlessness in any generation, I think. Mm-hmm. And it's not due to a war. It's not due to outside influences. I think it's due to a selfishness of like, I want to do what I want to do. There's a moment of becoming a parent where you say, well, you know what, I actually I can't go out with the boys, and I can't go golf, or I can't go shoot trap, or I can't go fishing, or fill in the blank. There is a moment in a man's life where they realize that they have to be a father, and they have to show up, and they have to train their kids up. And I think we are missing a lot of that. How has that played a part in your parenting of saying, you know what, this is how I want to show up so that my kids can see who it is that they should be growing up? Because, right, we like to think that a lot of leadership and a lot of lessons are taught by verbally telling them, don't do that, don't do this, look both ways before you cross the road. And then we, just barrel across the road without even looking, right? We're not a good representation of what it is that we're actually speaking. And so it's caught, it's not taught. We've heard that. Yeah. And so I'm curious for you, what are some of the things that you're working with your kids to catch versus tell and teach?
Mm-hmm. That's powerful. I love that. Taught versus caught. And so one, I would say too, now I'm a person of faith, and I actually pray. I actually ask the Lord to show me how has he created them? I believe that each person is created in the image of God, and he has created them uniquely for a purpose. And so ask him. And then also, I watch them, and you start to see their gifts, talents, and abilities, and you start to see where their passions are. Just as a super quick example, our son, highly entrepreneur. He is 12 years old, but he would go sell lemonade. And what he would do, Nathan, is he would load it up on he had a little buggy, and he would go door to door, door to door. Like, who can say no to a little 9-10-year-old selling lemonade door to door? But he's always been very entrepreneurial. And so when we have some business discussions, like my wife and I'll talk to him about the importance of tithing. I'll talk to him. He's like, hey, you see this decision right here? You've got 2 options. One of the reasons I'm leaning towards this one, and I'm just interacting, I'm just showing him some of the decisions that I'm making. We also do like some worship events, and we do some stuff with their city. We engage them in the whole process, right? I'll say, hey, I talked with the city. This is what they said. This is what we did. And they're there with us the whole time. They see what the setup looks like, the tear down, all of it. And so I try to engage them with the entire process. They ask questions, try to be able to answer. And sometimes it doesn't seem like they are even paying any attention, but they are, Nathan. They are, because I hear the little conversations that they talk about. I hear the conversations they have with themselves and with their friends. And so they are paying attention, and much more is caught than actual is taught. So we try to have them engage in everything that we do and be a part of everything that we do. Our daughter, I've even taken her out of school to go do some speaking engagements with me, right? And she'll be my videographer. She's like 9.
She's probably better than most videographers that are out there too.
She is. And so recently, I guess about 6 months ago, we drove up to Nashville, and I had a speaking engagement there. And she, the guy who never missed a day of school checked our daughter out. She missed the day of school to be my videographer.
Didn't want that to be your legacy, that your daughter was there every single day. You want to keep that record in the family, right? That's what right. It really is.
Make sure they do not pass my record. So we just try to engage them in everything we do.
I think that's such a huge point. And I hope you're hearing this, because this is something, especially if you have kids or if you're ever planning to have kids, this is such a big piece that I think parents miss. Parents try to shield their kids from realities of life. That doesn't mean that, you don't protect your kids from certain ideologies and different kinds of things, because at a young age, you do have to make sure that you're careful of what is being poured into your kids. Now, when it comes to experience, though, you got to teach your kids, you got to allow them to experience what life is really like. Our kids just went to the dentist. One of the things that when I take our kids to the dentist, they turn on these TVs and they have Bluey on or something like that. And I'm like, turn the TV off. My kids don't need to watch TV while they're getting their teeth cleaned. They can sit there like a normal adult, because guess what? I don't get to watch sports or TV when I'm having my teeth cleaned. So they don't get to watch, a show when they're getting theirs cleaned. And most adults, they would listen to me saying that and they're like, wow, that seems really harsh. No, that's the reality of life. There are times where you have to sit still and experience things. You are teaching your kids about community, and it's not just community of showing up and experiencing and taking. It's actually showing up and it's being a part of, it's building community. It's, it's putting things together. It's taking things and tearing things down. One of the things I love so much about certain parents is that they teach their kids service, because service is such a huge thing of how do we show up and care for other people. You said earlier that we shouldn't come with all of our baggage to every single conversation. Sometimes you need to show up for the other person. And how can you be your best for that person so that they can process, that they can go through things? For you, in terms of this idea of serving and lifting other people, Cory, has that always been something deep down inside of you? Has that service bug always been there? Or was that something that was caught from your folks growing up?
Yeah, I think it probably was imparted by my grandmother to an extent, but I think it was always there as well. Like, I can remember as a kid growing up, we would get together, all us guys, all us boys, and we'd play baseball or football or tennis or whatever. But I was always the one that gathered everyone, and I wanted to make sure everybody was a part of that. And so from an early age, really trying to do that piece as well. And that was really, I think, when I was telling the story about going into physical therapy, that was really what drew me to it as well, is serving other people, helping people get back to doing what they were previously doing prior to an accident or whatever it was. And so that serving piece has always kind of been there. And I guess from the genesis of that, it's probably my grandmother. She was big time community service, big time in church service. And so, yeah, it's always been a big part. And it's fun to see now that our kids pick up on that as well, and how they want to be a part and how they're actually asking to do different things. And so that's fun too. Yeah.
That is cool. And I think I really do love that, because you are gifting your kids with opportunities. What are the opportunities that you're starting to create for your kids? Like you've already talked about a couple, especially, your son having, his lemonade selling business. I love that. Teaching them entrepreneurship. I think that's one of the things that I think a lot of parents should do. I think they should teach their kids about entrepreneurship. Growing up for me, my father was an entrepreneur. I didn't know he was an entrepreneur until I graduated college and started trying to be an entrepreneur myself. And I was like, oh, my dad had his own business for 35 plus years, and I didn't even know it. Right. So there's a moment where you start going, I wish my folks had taught me that. And it's not that they were like trying to keep me from learning. It was just not something back in those days that you were teaching your kids about business and how to build a business and how to, market and do those kinds of things. Those things were never taught to me, right? Those were things that I had to learn myself. And so as I move forward as a parent, I'm going, well, how do I teach my kids to show up in these different capacities? How are you starting to create these opportunities in your kids' life?
Yeah, that's a great question too. And so it's funny, the lemonade stand, that was all his idea. So he just took the initiative. And so I'll give you a couple of examples. Our daughter, I guess all of them are entrepreneurial, but she made some bracelets and she's got her own business. By the way, she's 9. She's 9. That's right, 9. And she has her own business card. It's called Kindle's Creations. And so she's got some bracelets, and there's a salon that carries her bracelets here. And so she sold some. But here's the other thing too. And so creating those kind of opportunities, I also speak it into them, right? Like our son, I know he's very entrepreneurial. And so when I pray with him at night, I talk about how he's wise, and I thank God for the wisdom and how he's wise in business and wise financially. Or our daughter, she's very creative. I speak that into her. And our son, our youngest son, he's highly gifted communicator. And so talk about that. But one of the best examples we're currently doing as it relates to your question is, I don't know how many listeners out there have kids and they're in school. They are always, maybe it's a thing in Mississippi, Nathan, I don't know. They are always selling stuff. Man, these schools are always selling stuff. Popcorn,
Christmas trees.
Yeah, whatever, right? And so we put them on the selling stuff. We don't sell it for them. Like, we may create the opportunities of like, hey, got a couple of people that are coming to this thing. If you want to tell them about your Marvel Troopers mug, or whatever. And they do it and let them sell it. I don't know how many, our daughter, she sold these chances for some pottery. I don't know how many she sold. Like, they did it though. Like, and so allowing them that opportunity, I think it's a great opportunity for them to see, it's an interesting thing. Until you actually see money, like, or see the numbers, you don't really have a clear foundation for what that is, or what's a lot, what's a little, what can I do with it? And it gives them that perspective. It allows them to see, oh, if I sell 5 of these, I make this, which allows me to do this or whatever. And so talk to them about that and give them that perspective and allow them to do the thing,
Yeah, I love that. Man, it's so good. There's so many great nuggets. I hope you guys are taking great notes, because there are some really great things to capture from what Cory's talking about. I want to also encourage you to go check out Cory. Go follow him. Got some great stuff on Instagram. Something just dropped today and I was listening to it. I was like, man, that is so good. And what I love about his Instagram lives that he does in his videos is that they're truly hitting some hard topics. It's not always just, happy and how to make life better. Sometimes it's just really cutting to the core of what we really need to be wrestling with as people. And so I want to encourage you, go check out Cory. You can find him, Cory_Lee_leadership. But you can also go to CoryLeeLeadership.com. You can check out some of his programs. He's a great coach too. So if you're looking for a coach, you can go check him out. Cory, before we wrap up today, I want to ask you another question here. I love this piece of identity. So often I think, and I've said this multiple times, I know that many of you have heard me say this, but so many times in life, we are so focused on the doing piece. We're so focused on accomplishments and trying to get ahead and be the best that we can be, that we kind of sell part of ourselves off. We lose part of who we are in our identity. And the worst thing is to be running after something so hard, hit it, and then realize, man, I've lost everything of who I am in order to hit this. It's not important, right? Cory, you and I, we are of the same belief of that and understanding of that. Cory, I'm curious for yourself, when you start creating a goal of something that you want to go and hit, what are some of the checks and balances that you have, that you go through to make sure that you're going to be in alignment with your core. If you're doing things that are in alignment with who you are, you receive benefits. And if you go against those, you find consequences in your life. Life is going to be painful, and you don't want pain, right? I'm curious for you, what are some of those checks and balances that you have to make sure that you are in alignment with who you are versus just chasing the next rabbit?
Yeah, man, that is a great question. It's such a powerful thing. I love everything that you've talked about on identity because it's such a key thing. And I think something we don't think a lot about. And I love your teaching on that. I think it's so powerful and really needed as well. And so some of the things that I really try to check out is I have about 5 core values, like really core values. And then there are some other values outside of that I, hold dear. And so that is one of the things that I definitely look at is understanding what my core values are. And that's almost like a boundary. So you want to know what you're not. I want to know what my non-negotiables are. So what's in alignment with that? What's in alignment with kind of long-term vision? So creating a long-term vision. And those are the two real things that I look at, values and vision. And those are my guardrails. But then also discussing that with my wife, because usually we're partners, right? And so obviously she's affected by what I choose to do or choose not to do. And I ask for her perspective, and then having some wise counsel in my own life to offer their perspective. It doesn't mean that I have to do exactly what they say, but having some wise counsel is very powerful because it's a different perspective. And a lot of times the thing that I'm trying to accomplish or create, I'm emotionally attached to, Nathan. And sometimes they can see past the emotion to see where it can go. So for me, those are almost the 3 filters that I look at: values and vision. And if you want to call them wise counsel, including my wife. She's in the wise counsel.
I think wise counsel is important. I think we discount wise counsel, right? And we can learn so much from people, but we can also make sure that we're not going to go through the pain of some of the circumstances that are going to be caused from being misaligned with an opportunity that we have going forward. Cory, this piece of identifying your core values is huge. If you want to learn more about identifying core values, go check Cory out. He has some great stuff around that. Core values, we've heard it before said that if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. And it's in that same vein that I think about core values. If you don't know what your core values are, well, guess what? You're going to live life all willy-nilly. You're going to be all over the place. You are going to find yourself in places that you thought you'd never go to, and that's not a good thing. At the end of the day, you got to start asking yourself, well, what do I want my life to be? That's why this vision is really important, of having a vision for your life. What do you want to have at the end of your life? But then also the value of what value does this bring to me? But I think there's also this other question, because of Cory's background of servant leadership, of what is the value to the other people that are involved? I think this is so good. And I think we could probably talk on this for another hour alone. Man, this was so good, Cory. I really appreciate you coming on the program to be able to share, talk about identity, talk about who you are, how you're working through things today. For those of you listening, I want to encourage you, go check out Cory. Truly, he is an awesome guy to follow. Also, I want to encourage you to subscribe and like this podcast and share this episode with someone who needs to hear what Cory had to say today, because there was such amazing amounts of wisdom that he was just pouring out. So Cory, brother, I thank you so much for being on. And with everyone else, I want to always remind you to be more, see more, experience more together.